or join the team at sport-social.co.uk.
Hello, welcome back to Masterclass Tactical Podcast. I'm Haider Rubbani and I'm your host as ever today. A quick turnaround, Rob. We are back after a couple of days. We're just as tired as Man United are playing 4 games in a space of a week. Manchester United have lost today against, I would say, a Leicester side in low confidence. Ollie rung the changes, understandably so. We've got a big game against Liverpool on Thursday. We've had a lot of game time. We got to see a lot of fringe players play. We weren't quite at it today. I think what you saw is players who hadn't played a lot of minutes. And invariably, when you don't have players that play a lot of minutes, they look rusty. And I think that just really sums up United today.
Yes. It was obvious, I think, that Ole was going to ring the changes. I think a lot of United fans thought that United should have gone strong for this match to try and solidify second and maybe go a bit softer on Liverpool. I don't think that was ever going to happen. I think there'll be changes for both matches, but I think it'll go obviously a lot stronger for their biggest rivals on Thursday. I was all for the changes today. I wanted United to make those changes. I wanted to see the kids come in. I'd said on Twitter before the game that I thought Elanga and Amad would start, and that did happen. So I was pleased to see that. But I think 10 changes for a game of this magnitude when you're playing a team in the top 4 is just a tiny bit too much. Added on to that, which we'll talk a fair bit about today, was the systematic changes. So we know that United are quite rigid in their 4-2-3-1. That's what we play every week. The players know it. That's how they train. It's a system banged into their brains. And today United started off playing a 4-3-3, a 4-2-4 out of possession so they could press high up the pitch. And then they kind of switched to a diamond for a little bit and kind of went back to the 4-3-3. And in the second half, where they made personnel changes, they went back to a 4-2-3-1, obviously what they know, but unfortunately they had players out of position who really can't play double pivots, can't play that shape and really struggle. It was a game of two halves, I think, for Donny van de Beek. I think in the first half, he looked really effective in a 4-3-3, allowed Matic to run the game from deeper, bring the ball forward, giving him a bit more space. But in the second half, when we went to a 4-2-3-1, Van der Beek, he can't play the double pivot. It's as simple as that. And you can see why he's not played minutes in serious games that cost you title places or cup places or wherever. When we want Donny van der Beek to get more minutes, it's just not happening because he cannot play that role. Today, I think Ole was happy to see him do that for the last 25 minutes or so. But you could see in the last 25 minutes, United didn't really have a lot to come back into the game. Once they'd gone 2-1 behind, 2 really bad goals, I think, today in terms of United's setup. That happens when you make those changes. But a disappointing result in the end. I just think today, United could have got a point out of this or even a victory. It wasn't a very good Leicester team. I don't think Leicester played that great themselves. But you could see that one team, certainly in the second half, really wanted these 3 points because they're fighting for their lives in the top 4.
Yeah, you're looking at the team, Rob. I mean, we'll run through the lineup, for anyone that hasn't seen the game. But we saw De Gea returning goal. We had Bailly and Axel in the heart of defense. We had Tellez and Williams come in. I mean, just looking at that back 4, it's a completely new, back 5, completely new back 5. And then you had Van der Beek, Matic, and Mata in midfield. And then Elanga, Mason, and Amad. And we talk about Van der Beek. Now, I thought positionally Van der Beek was pretty good. He had to make sure that he didn't vacate that space that he has done in the past. I mean, we saw the absolute car crash against Istanbul. So in that respect, I mean, I know we're talking about low standards here, but I thought that he was much more disciplined than he has been. I think that was a positive. I think that he's starting to understand that position or understand playing a little bit deeper better, sort of before he wasn't able to do that. The biggest problem for me, though, Rob, is that I just don't think as a whole it's a position which A, benefits United and B, benefits him. I don't think he was progressive enough today. I don't think he offers enough in terms of, sort of going forward. And unfortunately for United today, I think where the game was lost really was in that midfield.
Yes, I'm not sure I completely agree with what your sentiment was there about Van der Beek, about discipline and position and all of this. I think when United played the 4-3-3, the reason why they did that today and why Ole's kind of rolled the dice and allowed that to happen is that he's trying to get the two young lads at the top end of the pitch more on the front foot. So you saw Amad pushing forward on the right. He got an assist today. Unfortunately for Elanga, United were not really able to utilise him. He's much better as a kind of player in the channel or central. He can play left as he did today, but you can see he's not particularly effective. And that allowed Donny van der Beek in a 4-3-3 to basically sit in the middle of the park with no one near him, no one marking him. Is that discipline? In a 4-3-3, you can do that. That's the role, and if he's playing for a team that played 4-3-3 every week, I think Donny van der Beek would look all right. I think he'd be fine. But it's not the role. It's not the role though our midfielders usually play. And as I said, it allowed Matic to kind of drop deeper and get the ball and bring the ball towards him. Now, in the second half, he did have to be more disciplined, but you can actually see the confusion that caused in his game. He was too close to Matic, then he was too far away from Matic. Then he was getting caught up the pitch, trying to, obviously, when United was trying to score a goal. And then when he was having to do defensive duties, he was giving the ball away or getting caught the wrong side of the ball. So I think it was all a bit of a mess from Donny van der Beek in the second half. In the first half, fine. It looked good because it was a kind of Dutch system that he's used to. We've seen Ajax play that kind of way, a kind of a progressive 4-3-3 where you see that there's a genuine press there. You can actually see it, visually. It allowed, as I said, Ahmed to kind of push up with the 4 across there to meet the back 4, and they were in a 3 at times. So yes and no. Like, I come out of this game thinking that if Man United want to play 4-2-3-1 next season, Donny van der Beek can't play it. That's how I feel looking at today and assessing the whole of the season. I don't actually think that I saw anything today that makes me think that there's hope for him next year, because I would have wanted to seen significant progression from this point. I want to be able to see him play a double pivot after doing it for a year, and he's not doing it any better than he was 7, 8, 9 months ago. So you had Matic, who's not that mobile, having to do a lot of the kind of mobility work in front of the back 4, and I felt kind of sorry for him. He was one having to really get stuck in, and you saw Van der Beek drop deep, but not really affecting anything, not really kind of plugging holes, not really getting stops. I would have 100% played 4-2-3-1 today. I would have played Fred and McTominay. I know everyone hates the McFred combination, but I think in this kind of game, you need solidity in that part of the park. Yes, you want to pass the ball out, but over 90 minutes, how many great passes did United make from in front of the defence today? A big fat 0, and that was from playing a progressive system of 4-3-3. Didn't quite work. So I would say 4-2-3-1 would have been better today with personnel that play that system. And I might have played Donny as a false 9. I'd have said, Donny, go and run the top of the pitch. You can go and do it, mate, because you don't need the discipline there. Just go and express yourself a little bit more. So I would have given him a start today. But I just think in that second half, he was exposed in the double pivot. It's a really difficult role to play. I'm not sure if people appreciate how difficult it is for conventional midfielders to play in a double pivot if they're not used to it.
100%, and that's why McFred play, Rob. That is the reason why they play. They aren't the sexy name. I get frustrated with them. A lot of people get frustrated with them. But as it stands right now, and that's part of the problem for Manchester United long term. But as it stands right now, they are our best option. They provide that solidity. They're not flashy. I want them to be more.
McFred play today. United don't lose.
Yeah, I probably do agree with that. And the thing is as well, though, Rob, is that it's a difficult situation for Ole to be in. I was very surprised to see how many changes he made. And I think that was, in some ways, it was great to see Amad play. And he had a good assist today. He looks fantastic for such a young lad. I think he naturally runs the channels. He's strong. I think that's what surprised me today. The way that he sort of shrugged off. I don't know who the defender was for Leicester, and then he had the awareness to play it to Mason. That was an exciting front three. Unfortunately, I don't think we really saw the sort of the potential that we could have done. I don't think Elanga showed that much today, but he's obviously got a set of wheels on him. He's quick, but Ole had to make changes, and in some ways, I commend him for going really, really brave. He played players that are either young or haven't played a lot, but unfortunately, when you don't have when you make that many changes and you don't have these players playing together consistently as they haven't done, you get disjointed performances. And I thought, well, let's go to the first goal. And I thought that, Axel was very poor for that first goal. I thought Matic was poor for that first goal. Matic has to track the runner from midfield. Axel shouldn't get dragged into, into the ball watching. And, it was a lovely finish. But apart from that, I thought Axel had a good game. And what were your thoughts on him? Because he's obviously someone that he does have the talent, but it seems that he's either not playing regularly, or when he does play, he's making mistakes. But these lads need game time. We talk about Brandon Williams, didn't have a great game today, but again, very difficult to come out from the cold and play a full 90 minutes here and there, and then go back out onto the bench and not be seen for months. Tellez is another player as well. You can say Matic as well. A lot of these players are fringe players. They don't get much game time. So to come in and be expected to play at a high level, and also having not played together as a team, like I said, disjointed, it is very difficult. Players aren't robots, Rob. I think people do forget that. But there were some poor performances there. I thought Williams struggled. I've never been convinced by him, but I do feel sorry for him because he's not playing regularly and he's trying to do a job, and it's not easy.
Yeah, I think just to kind of add all that up and unpack it, I think, very rarely when we do the masterclass say what I would have done, it was more about kind of assessing what Ole did. I would have done the changes. I'm with him on that. I might not have done 10 of them, but I would have done them. But I think you've also still have to go into these games with a solid base, respecting the fact that your fringe players haven't played a lot of minutes. So yes, today was the right time to play the fringe. I would have absolutely started Tuanzebe with Bailly. I think that was the right choice. I think Luke Shaw needs a rest. We can't burn him out. We cannot lose him for the Europa final. So yes, you play Tellez, even though I thought when he played his game against Roma, he was a complete disaster at left back.
Yeah, but he was fine tonight. I thought,
but he was okay. He was okay tonight. He was okay tonight. I think he was more solid. But I would not have played Brandon Williams. I would have played Wan-Bissaka. And again, I said this on Twitter before, and people were like, "But Wan-Bissaka needs a rest," and it's true. He does need a rest, but he would have been physically fit for tonight's game. And I think, again, with the first goal, you mentioned now Axel and Matic for the goal. I think the goal was actually Brandon Williams' fault. Why? Because he gets caught under the ball. Our famous saying at Man United, getting caught under the ball. He comes so narrow that he's actually
right backs like doing that, don't they, Rob?
Well, yeah, they do. Well, our right backs have done, but I think with Brandon, he just gets, because it's early in the game. It's 10th minute or something. He gets kind of scared. He comes under the ball. He goes to the centre back position and he's covering. But of course, then what do Leicester do? They see that and they put the ball over to the far post. That's what you do. You look up. You see the fullback's gone too narrow, so you go over the top of him. So they did that and they scored. I've got no problem with Brandon Williams playing minutes. I think that he's a decent fullback. I think last year was difficult for him in terms of his progress. And I think it's difficult for him now trying to get minutes and having to rely on him. Tonight wasn't the night where I would have changed that. Ole made 10 changes. And when you're changing the whole team, you've got to have some kind of know-how in there, that people that know how to make things tick along. So if you're bringing Tuanzebe in there, who's not played for a long time, and I think he looked rusty tonight. There was times where he looked either really good in the blocks or getting his body in the way, but other times his passing was atrocious, and he's a passer of the ball. That's why I'd have played a double pivot that knows what the team does. And yes, McFred, a bit boring, a bit dull, not particularly great at progressive passing. But today they would have protected that whole back four. They would have looked after Brandon Williams because someone would have got in the channel with him and helped him. They'd have helped Tellez on the other side as well. They'd have helped the centre-backs. We didn't have any of that help, did we? So I think in the second half, even when we went back to the double pivot, it didn't work because we had the wrong people in the double pivot. So I think that was a key part of the loss today. I've got no issues with Ole making these changes. I think before the Liverpool match, this is the time to do it. I really would have preferred Cavani and Bruno and Pogba and Rashford to see no minutes today. That would have been ideal. I think Rashford coming on was the wrong choice for a guy who's injured and has been injured week after week after week. Rob. So when that substitution was made, I expected Cavani to come on, and I expected that Elanga would come off because he'd had a pretty quiet game, and that they would shuffle the pack. And I thought Mason would go to the right, and you'd have Cavani through the middle. But bringing on Marcus, you saw the goal. The second goal was Marcus Rashford's fault. He's marking Soyuncu and lets him go, kind of gets in the spin, gets 4 yards, 5 yards away from him, and then it's a clean header. It's 2-1. You've lost the
Another
game.
set piece, Rob, as well.
Another set piece, something that you need to kind of work on, I think, going forward. We've said this, I don't want to say it because it's today, but you can actually see what you lose when you don't have Harry Maguire in there. I think the big thing for Harry Maguire, and I've criticised him on our show here many times for this exact point, is that the communication is maybe not always there. I'm not always happy with what I'm seeing. But I tell you what, I don't think that back four spoke to each other today. I looked at Bailly and Tuanzebe, and not once did I see them actually tell each other, I want you there, or I'm coming back here, or I'll come. There was none of that. It was just completely mute, the back four, when no one was really talking. I think Tellez does actually have a bit of a gob on him, and he does talk when he can do. But overall, there was a lack of leadership in there. And I think, again, from that corner, Rashford, he's a young lad still, but I expect him to give a little bit of leadership when he's just come onto the football pitch. But he looked half asleep, and he has had injuries. So I don't get that from Ole to bring on Marcus at that point. It wasn't the substitution that I thought was natural. I would have probably brought on Bruno with 25 minutes to go and try and just turn the game a little bit from the centre of the park. Maybe taking Mata off. Mata went to the right for the last 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, Mata should have come off
what
a long time ago.
Yeah, Mata playing on the right, so you've lost all your pace on that side of the pitch. He can do it, but I think that Ole was fumbling around for tactics in the second half today rather than having a clear game plan. And that comes from playing youngsters, from maybe mixing it up just a little bit too much. 10 changes kind of ruined United's chances.
And the change of system. We were talking off
yeah,
air.
it's a huge philosophical thing to change. Like you can't teach a system even in a week. You can't take those set of players and say in 7 days we're going to go from this system that we've played for a year, and now we're going to do something that we're not so good at as well, like playing diamonds and playing 3 across the middle. It's not natural. If you want to play 4-3-3 and you want to play it progressively, you have to play Pogba on the left of a 3. That's what you have to do. But you don't want to play Pogba tonight because you want to rest him. So it's great changing systems, but only when you can actually do it with the correct players. And I think today, Amad did well on the right of that midfield 3 because he was pushing forward. He was obviously, that was what the designation was for him, but it didn't really work for Elanga. I don't actually think it worked that well for Greenwood. Like Greenwood's kind of to the right and allowed Mata to press forward in a 3. And I kind of think that being not quite in the channel didn't help Mason's game either, because he was you could see he was kind of on the left, on the right. He was dropping deep.
Yeah, he was dropping deep. I thought it was
confused.
That was
confused. It looked confused because he's just trying to work hard. That's what his brain's telling him to do. I'm working for my teammates here. I've got to drop a little bit deeper. I've got to go and help these younger lads, even though he's also one of the young lads, but he's got plenty of games under his belt. And you could see that from United today, that confusion was there, I think, for the whole 90 minutes. And I don't blame the team for that. I think that comes down to the manager. I think the manager has to organise those things. And I think today would have been the day just to do something that but with different players.
Absolutely, Rob. I'm going to bring up a question here from Gerard. Guys, get your questions in. We'll look to answer as many as possible. Thank you for all your comments, as always. And it says here across the bottom, Gerard enjoyed the game. Despite so many changes, couldn't understand how Mata played the whole game. Has to be shown the door in the summer.
It wasn't a bad game. Yeah,
it wasn't the worst game in the world. The first half, I thought United's retention was good. I mean, we don't have the ticker across the bottom, but United only had 4 shots, so Rob, and that was the problem. We looked a bit blunt. We kept the ball, I thought, quite nicely. At times, especially in the first half, the retention was good. There's a lot of pace up top. We just didn't have that cutting edge, and it's a bit of a shame with Mata because look, when he joined Manchester United, he was an absolutely, top player at Chelsea. Obviously, had the whole thing with Jose Mourinho. Came to Man United probably at the worst time. Played out on the right. Has played out on the right really his whole career at United. He's just, obviously he's getting past it a little bit now. And I think I probably agree with this. And I absolutely love Juan Mata. He's an absolute gentleman, and I think he's been a fantastic player. But he doesn't quite have it anymore. I think perhaps the legs have gone a little bit, and the game passing by a little bit today. It is quite sad to see. A couple of the senior players, I thought Matic had a good first half, second half. Again, just looks like the legs have gone. And, it's unfortunate for United. They're going to have to find a solution, whether it's promoting from within. Obviously, transfers will be a way of fixing it. But United probably do need to upgrade on those 2 players, I think, come the summer, whether it's internally or externally.
Yeah, I agree on that point. I don't really agree on the legs point, and I'll explain why. Is that I would have played Mata today. I would have definitely played him. But the fact that he was at the point of the press kind of doing the Bruno role doesn't help Juan Mata, does it? So, we're talking about legs and running, and Juan Mata's never done that his whole career.
I don't know why he was pressing though, Rob.
For him to press like our central midfielder, Bruno Fernandes, who is the best midfield presser of the ball in the world, to then go and say in a 4-3-3, which is a pressing system, you've got to be the guy that leads the press. That's kind of like,
my mind was,
that's mind blown. So I would have played the system. I'd have played 4-2-3-1. I'd have played Van der Beek as a false 9 dropping off. I'd have played Mata as a 10 behind him in a freer role, and then I would have had the 2 young lads. I'd have had Amad on the right, and I'd have Elanga on the left, and I'd have let them overlap with those 2 dropping in, and then you've got that space in behind because your 2 middle players are bringing those centre backs out a little bit. And we didn't do that. We played 4-3-3 instead. So you played 4-3-3. So I don't think that helps Juan Mata. And I think Juan Mata will probably leave United at the end of the season. But I tell you what, there's still football in it for him. If he goes to a team where he can put the ball on the deck and be a trequarista and play in the pocket and all of those things, I don't think Juan Mata's legs have gone. I just think that if you play him in this system, you can't really play him in a 4-2-3-1 because he doesn't really suit that 3. He certainly doesn't suit the double pivot. That's way too far back for him. But in this 4-3-3, where you're asking him to be Bruno Fernandes in the kind of role, what? No, I'd have rather had Scott McTominay doing that, running at the goalkeeper. So I don't really want Juan Mata being my guy leading the press, even though I would say for the first half, he didn't do a bad job of it. I think he was there and you could see he was kind of bringing on him, and Greenwood were on that side and kind of pushing towards the centre-backs. Okay, that did kind of work. It stopped Leicester from playing out from the back. But as the game progressed, United were in a weird shape and tried to do things that they were doing earlier in the season, and none of it really worked. And as you said, then you end up with Juan Mata on the right-hand side, giving you nothing for the last 10 or 15 minutes.
Absolutely. Guys, you've spoken a lot about Van der Beek, but I will answer this. We'll answer this quickly, Rob. It says here, thoughts on Van der Beek. We've discussed our thoughts, but thought he was sloppy in general, didn't impact the game in any way, really. Time to cut our losses in the summer. I said this months and months ago, and this is not against Donny as a player. Rob, we've had this discussion many, many times, but, I'm struggling to see. Look, he needs to get up to speed with the league. He needs to adapt rather than the team adapting around him, because that's not going to happen. But, if United, we've discussed this before, if United get some decent money for him, is it possible that they do cut their losses and maybe bring Lingard back? I think we should sell Lingard, but, deciding, because at the moment, you look at Donny van der Beek and what is he offering that's better than someone like Lingard, for example?
Nothing. Zero. Nothing. He's not offering anything more than Jesse Lingard is. So if you think about, like tonight, Ole's done what Ole should do, and that is he's trying to get people on the pitch. He's trying to give people minutes. United has secured the top 4, and now all eyes are on the Europa League final. Does Donny van der Beek have any chance of playing the Europa League final? I tell you what, if there was 5 injuries in the team, he wouldn't play. That's how far he is down the pecking order. And that is his fault because he's not played well enough when he's had the chance. So I think today Ole's put that 4-3-3 out because, as I said, both there's him, there's Elanga, and there's Amad, and he's trying to find a system that fits those 3 players to get the most out of them. And I would say that all 3 didn't really have any kind of effectiveness today. I think that Donny was sloppy at times. I think towards the end of the first half, he had the ball quite a bit, and there was no incisiveness from him. He lost the ball 3 or 4 times, and it felt disappointing. And then in the second half, it felt like rabbit in headlights. So he was dropping deeper into the double pivot because he had to do that job. And you can see he just doesn't like doing it. He hasn't got the motor. He'd already run for 75 minutes, so he was knackered. And you could see that those things all were kind of piling up on top of him. Do you sell Donny van der Beek in the summer? You said there, if you get a good price for him, well, who's going to give you a good price for him after a year of nothing? You're not going to get a good price. What you're going to have to do is cut your losses. So do
you think his value's dropped that much, though, Rob?
Oh, yeah. I think so. I think so. So, say you're Ajax. Say we know this kid and we'd buy him back. What are you going to pay for him? they'll start at like 18 million, Haider. They're not going to give you what you gave them for it, because you were buying a player with great potential who was going to help you to go for the Premier League or go to the next level, try and win you trophies. And what you've ended up having is a guy that basically collects the water bottles at the end of the game. He does nothing. So that's really on Donny. And obviously, I think Ole wants to still find a place for him. There's no doubt about it. But I don't see United next season reverting to a 4-3-3. That's not something they're going to do.
And he's not a Pogba replacement in the deep position.
Well, he can't be. He's not fit to lace Paul Pogba's boots in those roles. That's not his fault. Again, that's the kind of style player he is. But we've kind of learned on the fly with him. So even like I said today, when he was in the double pivot, say he'd given us 45 minutes today and played well in the double pivot in that role with Matic, we could have now been sat here going, do you know what? We lost the game. But that's a positive, isn't it? Donny van der Beek could play the double pivot. Maybe something has clicked in his head and he's got there. He's not there. So I just think that United are more likely to go 20 million for Donny van der Beek. Off you go. Right now, we might need someone like Ndidi. Do you go for a player like that? Do you look at Basuma and say, Basuma, 35 million, 40 million maybe? Do we have to go a little bit higher to get him? But he's a number 8. He's an engine. He's proved that he can play in the Premier League every week in, week out, with the team at the bottom of the table. Those players are the toughest players in that bottom 6 or 7, because they've got to run all day long. That's just the way it is. And it's a good.
He also plays for a manager that's. Yeah, he also plays manager. Yeah, and Basuma can play. I would implore anyone to go and watch we can get Rob. If you look at the statistics,
I know,
they're playing. Brighton are playing like a top 4 side. They just can't put the ball in the net. If you look at all of the statistics, their chance creation is absolutely brilliant, and Basuma is very central to that. I don't think he's a 6, Rob. I don't think he can sit and hold. It's wasting him. But he's an engine in that midfield. And if you're going to play,
we don't play with 6s. So this is another thing. 4-2-3-1 allows you not really to play with 6s. You're not if you're playing 4-1-4-1, then you would generally play with a 6, like a Matic screening or a Carrick screening, that kind of player. But again, stylistically, United don't really play with a 6. Paul Pogba's got 6 on his back, and he's nothing like a 6, is he? Obviously, numbers don't always equate to the position. But Basuma, you could play him in all 5 roles behind the striker. So if you played 4-2-3-1, he could play in the 2 in front of the 4. He could play in the 3 behind the 1. He could do all of those things and give you kind of more value in terms of creating chances, scoring goals, getting in the box, all the things that you would like Donny van der Beek to do. But unfortunately, we've not seen it. And I think that's why it's more likely that Donny van der Beek will leave now, because it's a case. I think he probably needs to find a team that stylistically fits what he does, and Manchester United are not that team. They're not going to play a system that suddenly we're sat here doing a masterclass going, Donny van der Beek is the key to this new system that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is playing. The only way I think he gets saved is if Ole left the club for whatever reason, and you had a manager who came in who was insistent on playing 4-3-3 and was Dutch and knew Donny van der Beek, then you might get away with it. But I think at the moment it does look bleak. Like that, didn't we? And there is more. It's more likely, I think, that Donny van der Beek goes, and that then United say, well, we would like a Lingard. We would like someone who will run and work in the 3 behind the 1, but will also give us a little bit more kind of Premier League know-how, who can kind of get up the pitch. And I think the whole thing with Lingard is trust, isn't it? I think most United fans don't trust him anymore simply because of his performances over the last 2 or 3 years. But he has gone to West Ham and almost got them in the Champions League, almost on his own. So you look at that and you think to yourself, well, is he good enough? Probably not. But then if you're United and you're trying to balance the books, or you're going to go and buy Sancho for 80 million and you want a supplement, you could get rid of a Donny van der Beek who's giving you nothing and at least bring in a Lingard who might give you something. And that's the balancing act. That's what Ole's going to have to answer in the off-season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think United got to be smart in the summer. Like we said on previous podcasts, there's not going to be a huge pot of money. We know the issues with the owners, pandemics, etc., etc. So United have got to be smart. If Sancho is going to come for 80 million, then whoever's coming in, it ain't going to be Rice for 80 million. So we can, scrap that. It ain't going to be a centre back for 56 million. It really is not. It's going to be someone who's going to be honestly 30, 40 million. And Basuma, for me, ticks all the boxes that you want. It's not the flashy name. He's not the one that's, going to sell the most shirts, Rob. But he functionally, if you look at the system and what he can offer and his attributes, I think it's a really nice fit.
Yeah, look, let's make an assumption here, and it is a big assumption, and obviously our viewers in the comments here can put their comments in on what they think about transfers or questions around that. Let's assume that Man United buy Sancho. Now, I know you'll be very happy about that, but there's certainly a bigger chance that United are going to get Sancho than any other club at the moment. Yeah, he's been on United's radar forever. The deal is kind of done. It's just it needs to be executed. Chelsea also want Sancho, but that's a different conversation. So if you spend 80 million on Jadon Sancho, then what do you do with everything else? Now, Gary Neville said on Monday Night Football yesterday that he thinks that if United buy Sancho, that's the end of all their business. They won't do any more business. Now, I totally disagree with that. Why do I disagree with that? I think because there's plenty of players in the United system at the moment and in the squad that are going to get moved out or chopped or changed or something. So Donny van der Beek is one of them. You know, you could get 20 million for him and say, goodbye, Donny, failed experiment, off you go. You could look at Matic and say, is he still worth it in the squad? Do we just drop him and chop him out, you know, pay him off and just get rid of him and just take the hit? Do you look at Mata and say the same thing? So I think when you look at United's fringe, there are still players there that won't be at the club next year, I think. And if they go out the club, you can't just buy Jadon Sancho. You can't do that. So let's look at the centre-back situation. So Tuanzebe today did okay. I'm not convinced over the season that Ole trusts him for whatever reason. He's not played him in the games that I expect him to play. He's not rotated in and out of the squad. He's had a few injuries. He's had a few problems. Eric Bailly signed a new contract. So, you know, Eric Bailly's staying.
Again, that was a surprise.
It was a surprise. But again, I think United, it's hedging their bets, isn't it? It's like, what do they want to do in the shape of their squad? And if Eric Bailly's going to be a reserve, which I think he will be, then you pay him up and he sits on the bench. And if he's happy with that, then happy days. You've got Lindelof and you've got Maguire, but then it tells you that you might move Tuanzebe out because you might get a decent bid from someone for him because he is a decent player. We've got here, you know, I think David De Gea will be sold and get Tom Heaton as backup. I think that will happen. I'm not sure about the Tom Heaton bit, but I do think that as it stands, David De Gea will be on the transfer market. So all of these things about, we're talking about 80 million, United not having any money, the best way to generate money is through transfers and sales. So United have got players that they can get off the books. Once they're off the books, Haider, that then frees up your wage bill. And that's what's really important. It's about how these players. So look at David De Gea. It's not whether you get 10 million for him or 20 million or 30 million. It's his £300,000 a week, whatever he takes, as one of the biggest earners or the biggest goalkeeper earner in the world. So if you take that off the books, £300,000 is a very, very good footballer to come into your football club. Or you get two for 150 each. Basuma might cost you 150, something like that, a week to come from Brighton to Man United. So there are certainly ways of doing it. And I think that's what we'll see. I think that's how this summer will pan out. I think Sancho will be the marquee signing. And I think we will then see two additional signings coming in. I think one will be a centre-back. I think that is quite likely to be Pau Torres. And I think that United will negotiate hard on that. They won't want to pay the full fee, but there is a buyout clause. Let's see what happens. If Villarreal beat us in the Europa League final, his price might jump 10 million. Or if he plays terribly, exactly. So other clubs do want him as well. But he's certainly on the radar. And then it allows United to maybe go for one other. I'm not talking a Grealish style signing. You're not going to get another £80 million footballer. I do think this, though, after what's been a horrible year for the Glazers in terms of financing and PR, there is every chance that this is the transfer window where they go a bit doolally and do something a little bit crazy. And we go, oh my God, they've just bought 3 big marquee signings because they're worried that sponsors are not going to stay at the football club. They're worried that they haven't got big names. They're worried that United fans are not going to buy the shirts. All of that kind of neurosis comes into their thinking, and they might actually just spend a little bit more money than we actually expect them to.
That would not surprise me at all, Rob, if they did that, because it's all about damage limitations now, isn't it? And we're seeing look, the pressure's on them. And it hasn't been like this ever. I don't remember. The sponsors are getting attacked. We saw the Hut Group pull out as well. That was That was 20 million over 10 years. Sorry, 200 million over 10 years, 20 million.
Yeah,
a year.
huge. That's a huge issue.
Yeah.
We're losing that deal, 200 million, and they said we're not doing that deal because of your fans. They said it out loud.
Yeah.
That's a problem because
Yeah.
that then just ripples through the airwaves, and that's a problem for them. So the Glazers need to make sure that the club is secure, not just financially, but the playing staff match their ambitions, because they still do want to win, or they still want to be in the top four. But it can't happen if they lose 6 fringe players. And, you know, we even talk about the Matters and the Matici's and these players, they're still important. But if you lose David De Gea, if you lose David De Gea, we've had this problem of having 2 great goalkeepers, and now you've only got 1 great goalkeeper. And what do you do with the other goalkeeper? You know, are you going to keep a Romero type figure around? Are you going to look for that kind of goalkeeper? Are you going to just get a Tom Heaton? So there's issues there. And United, I do think that there'll be more incomings than maybe say other pundits are saying at the moment.
Absolutely. Rob, this is a bit of it's 2 questions, but I'm going to sort of mold it into one here. So I'm going to bring it up. Jordan's asking, is there a wake-up call for Ollie to use the full squad more? I thought we looked tired and disjointed in the second half. Leicester were more on it. And then here from Alan saying that, mentioned in the comments, what are the thoughts about giving a player a run of games? Hearing that about Van der Beek, now Fred 2 years ago, can a manager afford to do that, or does it impact winning? I do want to give my sort of 2 cents worth on Ollie's squad rotation. Now, I think Alan's spot on when he's saying that you got to win. Managers need to win games, and they select the side that they think is going to win the game. It's very difficult for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer when he goes and rests Bruno Fernandes. He brings in someone like Donny van der Beek, and the levels are just so far below what Bruno offers. So he's got to play Bruno week in, week out. We see that with Marcus as well. And we've seen that this season. Martial hasn't been at it. We've seen Mason until the last, I'd say, 2 or 3 months. He was off it as well. Understand, Ole wants to win games, so he has to play these players. But there have been occasions, Rob, where he hasn't had to play had to play Marcus, hasn't had to play Bruno, and he's played them. He's played other players when he hasn't had to. He hasn't rotated. And if there is one criticism I do have of Ole, is that I think that he could have managed the squad better, in the sense where, you know, if you're playing some of these fringe players more, they're going to have more minutes. They're going to be a bit more confident, I think, a bit more up to scratch, rather than when they do come in after months and months out in the cold. They obviously played terribly. We saw Telles against Roma. It's very difficult for a manager. I completely understand where Ollie's coming from, because he has to win football matches. Because if he loses 2 or 3 games on the bounce, the pitchforks will be out, and, you know, the talk about his job, etc. But I do think there have been several games where he didn't need to play certain players, and ultimately we've seen with some of the players that have picked up injuries, Marcus being one of them, I think Ollie has contributed to that in some respect.
I don't know. I don't want to subscribe to that, because I think, you know, what did I say to you really early on in the season? That the league table doesn't lie, didn't I? That was one of my little catchphrases early on. The league table doesn't lie. You don't look at the table early on in the season, but you certainly look at it now. And every decision that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has made has been vindicated, because he's in the final of a European trophy and almost solidified second. And if Manchester City, or, you know, if United started the season slightly better and City had not had that great run of wins, they would still be in the title race now. So I think it's difficult, because I think you've got to look at it in terms of winning and nothing else. It's always about winning. If you can rotate and win, then you rotate. If you feel you can't rotate because it will impact winning, then you absolutely don't rotate. So early on in the season, why was it that Henderson wasn't getting games and De Gea was playing? Because I think at that point, the manager was thinking, I can't make that change yet. I need to stick with my number one, the experienced player, and I will do it eventually. And I think Ole's done that fine. You know, I think when you look at players who've come through in the squad this year, or players that have maybe played more minutes than people expected, I think he's slowly groomed the squad to do what he wants them to do. 4-2-3-1, play that impactful system, play the double pivot, allow the 3 to be fluid, and then kind of chop and change your striker. Obviously, it started with Martial being the first choice, and it's slowly morphed towards Cavani, towards Mason, and even a little bit of Rashford. So I think that he's done it at the correct pace. And again, say we were 4th or 5th or 6th, then I think we could be saying, You're a bit Arteta, aren't you? Because Arteta's done that. He's rotated. He's moved players in and out. He's tried different things. He's allowed Willock to go to Newcastle, and he's gone to Newcastle and helped Newcastle stay up. And if he'd been at Arsenal, Arsenal might have been higher up the table. So you make these choices and you live and die by them. And I think Ole's choices overall have been worthy. I don't think we can sit here and really criticize him, because the Donny van de Beek question is probably the biggest one, isn't it? That's the one where people have said, why is Donny not playing? We know why Donny's not playing. We know why Donny hasn't broken through. We know why Donny has been less impactful than he should have been, because we've broken it down on this show tactically about what the issues are. The common fan who may be not interested in tactics and just look at the result at the end of the day might be saying, where's my Donny van de Beek? I want Donny van de Beek.
Or if they like shiny new toys, Rob, and that's all that matters.
Me before the start of the season, when Donny came, one of the common conversation that I had was Cavani's a goal digger and he's going to be a useless, and Donny van de Beek's going to save Man United, and Paul Pogba's terrible. They were the three things that the consensus of United fans were saying, whether it be on fan channels, on Twitter, or just in general. They were the kind of narratives. And all three of those narratives are kind of skewed massively. So Cavani's had a great season. Pogba has been sensational once he'd got fit. And Donny van de Beek has been a disaster. So those three things haven't worked. And I think Ole has managed them well enough to the point that we are second in the league in a European final, and we're not got any damage off the back of those issues, or three things that we thought would happen that didn't happen as a fan base.
I think it's a difficult job, Rob. We're in a pandemic year as well, condensed match schedule or fixture schedule, which hasn't actually been mentioned. I think it should be mentioned, because you've noticed the teams that play a much more of a high energy game. I'd say Liverpool's one of them. Yeah, you can possibly say Leeds, although they've peaked quite well near the end of the season. But these sort of teams have really struggled, and I think United aren't a high pressing team. They're also not a team that sits back and plays a low block. So I think in that respect, Ollie's done a really good job.
And this year we've gone from being a team in transition who play counter-attack football to playing more actual football on the deck. So United have done that. They keep the ball better. And even today, with a much changed team, there was a period about 20 minutes in the first half where it just looked all silky and smooth. And then it all went messy and horrible again. But the point is that they're trying to do it. It's now more in their DNA. They're trying these things. Whereas a year ago, we were just a counter-attack team. That's what we did, And if you're slow and we're quick, we're going to beat you. Kind of as simple as that. Whereas this year, United have played more actual, what I would call real football, the more 5 or 10 yard stuff, more through Bruno facilitating, keeping the wider players more narrow, allowing the striker to kind of check in and out, doing more things like that, allowing Maguire to bring forward with the ball. All of that stuff is what I call real football, rather than this kind of basketball style transition football where you just kind of hit them and hurt them and try and do that all the time. But generally, teams that do that don't win titles, don't get to finals, and don't get to the top of the Premier League. City are the opposite, aren't they? I think we're probably closer to City stylistically now than we've ever been in the last, say, 7 or 8 years, or certainly during the Guardiola years. I'm not saying we're exactly like them. The difference is their squad is a much bigger rung above ours. Like when De Bruyne's out, we said this before, innit? De Bruyne's out and they bring in world-class players. If we lost Bruno, that would be the end of our season probably. We'd be in trouble, wouldn't we? You take 30 goals out of the team and assists, and you'd struggle massively. So I think that's the next step for United, is to build a squad where you can then rotate and feel better about players. I don't think we're quite there at the moment.
No, definitely not. You can see there's still deficiencies in key areas. Rob, let's go to the final word. Guys, thank you for all your comments as always and your fantastic questions. We really appreciate it. Final word, look, I think Ollie had to rotate. It's a shame we lost tonight. I completely understand it. I'm not angry, to be honest with you. I think it's he's got to manage the squad and I think while it'd been great to beat Leicester, he doesn't want to lose to Liverpool. Let's be honest, he'll play a stronger side against Liverpool. He has to manage the squad. We've got a European Cup final. But all in all, look, I think we've seen why certain players aren't playing. And we also saw a few bright sparks. I thought Mason's goal was fantastic today. He's really developed into his whole game very, very well this season. I'm really impressed with him. He had a really difficult start. We've spoken about this on this podcast, but I think he's got 12 goals now. He's been in fantastic form the last couple of months. Really, really building and developing into a really talented all-round footballer and not just a really good finisher. And I was really happy to see Amad play. It's been a while. He looks a talent. There's no doubt about it at all. And Ollie's got to manage him. He looks strong. Technically, he looks refined. I think he's going to be a player that United fans should get excited about. And, hopefully he can carry on developing. But all in all, it's not the end of the world. Ollie rotated. It didn't work out. Probably made too many changes, changed the system. He will go back to 4-2-3-1 against Liverpool. And I fully expect United to try and put their strongest side out and win that game.
The strongest team will be out on Thursday playing 4-2-3-1. You can bet your house on it. Absolutely. But it's not whether United need to win the game or not. That's not really what it is. It's a derby match. It's against Liverpool. Obviously, it's a postponed fixture. There's all sorts of kudos around it. And you want to win these games. It's just how it is. You lose to Leicester. That's not ideal. And as I said today, I think if you play the double pivot, I think you play McFred, you don't lose this game. You maybe at worst draw it. And we're sat here maybe saying something slightly different. I think for United, you just saying the players that you mentioned, I think Amad has clearly got all the talent in the world. You can see that even for a young lad, he's just got great balance and endeavour, and he's quite strong for a small lad as well. And talking about Mason, there was 2 or 3 times tonight where I watched him travel with the ball, and he just kind of reminds me of Mbappe. Just glides. And it's rare, like it really is rare. Like when Marcus runs with the ball, he doesn't run like that. Marcus runs at pace with a little bit of trickery and moves in and out, and maybe kind of is a little bit more Ronaldo-esque in the early days, a trick here or there. Whereas Mason kind of goes past the player and is just gone. And the player just doesn't know what to do because he's dribbled past them. There was 2 times today in the first half where he did it, and then he made bad passes at the end of it. So you think to yourself, if you can get that pass, that's going to be the next part of his game. I think his development for a young player is outstanding, and he is the talent at Man United for me. Like going forward, we talk about who's going to be the striker, who's going to score goals. I don't think it really matters whether Mason's the 9 or playing to the right of a 4-2-3-1. I think he's just going to score lots of goals. As long as he has creativity around him, he's that kind of player I just think will just continue to develop. I really hope he doesn't go to the Euros. Now, I know England fans might not like that.
I was going to say the same thing.
I want him to have the summer off. I don't think he needs to be with the England team for the Euros. I'm sure he would have absolutely loved to go. Like every player wants to go to a major tournament. So I don't think that he would be sat there going, no, please don't pick me, Gareth Southgate. I think with a 26-man squad, he's almost nailed on that he will go, especially since he's scoring again. I think that's 10 goals in the last 17 for him. So that's a pretty good record for any striker, any forward. And I think really with Mason, you've just got to keep trusting him. He's not a bench player. He's a starter, and this is the problem with Sancho. If you bring Jadon Sancho in, it does mean that who loses the minutes? Well, it's going to probably be Mason, and it will definitely be Amad. So those 2 players who you want to kind of develop and keep moving forward, Sancho might inhibit that. However, I prefer competition. I would rather Sancho be at the club and let them all work it out that way. And then you see who the best players are and the cream rises to the top.
Always. And my sort of last point on Mason before we wrap up, Rob, is that you talk about the way he carried the ball, the way he glides. He wasn't doing that even 3 months ago. Nope. Not to that effect, and not to, not that well as well, which is very, very... which has been very, very impressive. You've got to give Ollie credit for the way he's managed him. He's had off-field issues as well. You've got to give Mason credit. He's an absolutely superstar talent. United have got an absolute gem on their hands. And we all want to see him, be absolutely brilliant at Manchester United. Rob, thank you very much for joining me as always. Guys, thank you for all your comments and all of your support. Really appreciate all the retweets and the likes. Spread the word. You want to grow this Masterclass family. Make sure you check out our website where you'll find all the podcasts and you'll find some articles as well. That's www.thefootballmasterclass.com. Have a lovely evening, and we'll see you on Thursday for the big one against Liverpool.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.